and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. This I tell you, brother, you can't have one without the other. Love and marriage, love and marriage.
Bill, what are you doing?
Shut up!
Why are you so mean to me?
I didn't hear nobody talking to you.
I was talking to you.
What's the matter?
I know you don't want to go to this assisted living center, Bill, but it's what's best for us.
I ain't going to no assisted living. I ain't going to no assisted living. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Not going.
I'm not the one that needs hearing aids, Bill. You are.
Do I look like I need assistance with anything?
Yes, you look like you need.
I don't think so. Look at him. Look at him. I bought all them boxes out here. Why should I go to somebody to assist me with moving boxes?
Because Bill Jr. will be here in just a minute.
Grandma!
Bill!
Stop talking to me.
Why are you always so daggum mean to me?
I ain't mean. Just look at you.
You are.
I am not mean, Wilma.
Get that stuff packed up. Our baby will be here in just a minute.
Do what?
I hear Bill Jr.'s truck right now. Get your stuff together.
Do what? Hey, Daddy.
Hey, baby.
Hey, Mama.
How you doing?
I said, hey, Daddy. He's not speaking to me again?
It's not that he's ignoring you, Bill. You know, he can't hear you. You have to holler.
I yelled at him twice.
Yell harder.
I said, hey, Daddy.
Hey.
Maybe that's too much.
Who's this?
This is your son, Bill. Quit being silly. Goofball.
Hey, Bill. Hey, that's a problem.
Please don't hit me.
That's a problem in itself, Wilma.
What?
You want to know why I'm so daggum mean?
I sure would.
Well, let me tell you. You listening?
Loud and clear.
Okay, you listening. You remember after we got married, you used to date a football player in high school, didn't you?
I didn't date no football player after we got married, Bill. That was plumb before we got married.
I thought you dated him after we got married.
No, I wanted to.
Well, if you didn't date him after we got married, look at him. What part of this joker looks like me? Look at them feet. Look at the feet. Big old feet. Big old shoulders. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Stop it.
Big old shoulders. Big old boy.
What are you saying that he's not your son?
Look at him. Look at him.
Bill, you look just like your daddy, honey. I'm glad you don't act like he don't act like you, and I'm glad. You remember when we went on Maury Povich? Maury said you was this baby's daddy.
Oprah said that?
No, Maury Povich. Oprah don't do those kind of tests.
Okay, well, let me tell you something. If Maury said it's my boy, I reckon he's my boy. I mean, he's been a good boy, but every time I see his feet and his hands, I've got to thinking.
But, Dad, I love you, Daddy.
Oh, he loves you.
I didn't.
You're so mean.
Hey, you've been a good boy. I didn't mean to say that. I just looking at your feet.
I'm going to take these boxes.
Go ahead, baby.
Don't take them there. Them my memory boxes.
I'll just take these two.
Such
my
a
memorabilia.
fine young man.
Huh? What?
I said I'm glad he acts like me.
Well, let me tell you something, Wilma. I ain't going to no assisted living. Do I look like I need assistance? Look at him.
We've already been over this. You need lots of this.
Look at him.
I don't want to look. I just ate.
I ain't going nowhere. They have to come get me, but I ain't going nowhere. I just want to tell you, I got memories about you, though, Wilma.
We have some memories. We've had some ups and downs, that's for sure, Bill.
I got memories in this box. Right here, one right here, credit cards. You remember them? Remember credit cards?
I do.
You don't have none now, do you?
No.
Okay, you remember them then?
You took it away from me.
All right, let's see what else I got in here. Yeah, look here.
No, you used to always want handkerchiefs for your birthday.
You got my handkerchiefs for Christmas. I like handkerchiefs.
It was your birthday.
My birthday? I remember handkerchiefs. Let's see what else I got. Looky here. When I was at North Caston High School, I broke all kind of records. I was the top of the list on the all-champion state. I think
Bill, you didn't a bit more play football than that preacher down the road that claims he played for Virginia Tech. I think he was on the cheerleading team.
I didn't. You talking about that preacher? I saw him cheering at the game last night.
I bet he was real hard.
Well, he was cheering up until toward the end, and then he went home. But listen, look at here. I didn't say I played football. I said I broke records down at North Gaston. There's a difference, Wilma.
I'm sure.
All right, let's see what else is over here, Wilma. Oh, yeah.
What in the world is that?
What does it look like? Something you ain't seen in a long time. Stay there right now.
Well, they don't make them, you know.
I remember that, though, Wilma. I remember that. Look at here.
Bill, you're sticking the
Look at here. Oh. You remember this, Wilma?
I remember.
You used to ride that Harley and you had them chaps on? You rode on the bike with me?
I could wear a pair of mean chaps back in the day, couldn't I, Bill?
I remember that. I remember that.
Those were fun times, Bill.
We had a good time, Wilma.
We did.
Wilma, stop talking. Please stop talking. I beg you in the name of the Lord to stop talking. All right, now.
I'll be nice there for a minute.
Look here. Got my pills. Got my pills.
I've heard people say,
baby.
too much of anything is not good for you. But I don't know about that. But it's happened with love.
I remember that, Wilma.
We've shared love.
Bill.
It doesn't seem to me like it's enough.
Here I come, Wilma.
It's just not enough. It's just not enough.
So excited about letting y'all meet Bill and Wilma again. But, so now I get oranges. When I come out and I get a Clemson. Well, I brought all you Clemson people something. It's called a penalty flag. It's something the referees didn't seem to understand how to throw on you guys yesterday. So I just thought I'd be a sore loser. But I appreciate the oranges, being we're not going to be eating any at Virginia Tech this year. But I hear it's been 30 years since you Clemson people went to the Orange Bowl. So if you don't know how to get to Miami, talk to us at Virginia Tech. We've been there about 10 times, and we'd be happy to show you how to get down there. I am a very sore loser. And it doesn't help that the man who's in charge of our computers is a Clemson grad, so he's fired. Good grief. I bet you I got 50 text messages last night. But it was fun. I enjoyed hanging out with the guys. We went to the game, and I didn't enjoy the game at all. That was just awful. But it's so fun to know that I'm loved, and that all the people have wore their Clemson stuff. At our 8 o'clock worship gathering this morning, our sweet little old retired ladies had Clemson stuff all over the place. On the stand that I was preaching off of, they came in wearing Clemson stuff. And it was just, I tell you what, some people lose bad and other people win bad. I'm just saying, Anyway, God is timing this message good on healing relationships, and now I have to be healed with all the Clemson fans. But it was fun. So, listen, if you're a guest, what we're doing is we're studying through the Gospels of Jesus Christ. We're looking at his teachings on himself. Jesus is the God-man. He is God and man totally combined. And so we're looking at what Jesus said about himself in the Gospels. Who did he describe himself to be? And so we spent the whole year looking at that. In the coming year, starting in January, we're going to change gears and we're going to be looking at the astonishing teachings of Jesus Christ on spirituality. I'm really excited about next year. I've already got the whole year laid out and everything that we're going to be addressing through the year. And so I'm pumped up. spent all week long just kind of redoing that, re-engineering the whole thing, and so I'm really excited about these teachings. The most valuable teachings on spirituality are obviously the ones that Jesus brought us. And so we're going to talk about today Jesus Christ being as his identity, the healer of relationships. Next week we're going to be discussing him as our refuge, and then we're going to finish it out in 2 weeks talking about Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, God with us, and what that means as his identity. So last night, because I was yelling and screaming at Tech, and I have a cold, I lost my voice, and so I may have to eat some of these oranges in the process, and I got my tea up here, so y'all just bear with me this morning. I apologize, but the yelling apparently didn't work, and it didn't help them making fun of me as a cheerleader either. So what I want to do this morning is I want to begin reading you the most passionate conversation in all of the Gospels from Christ. When a person knows that they're about to die, typically you hear their soul. When a person is aware that death is coming, they begin to get real deep about what matters to them most. A person's passion really gives us a tremendous sign into their identity, by the way. What a person is really passionate about exposes who they are. And so right before Jesus goes and has his final time with his disciples and establishes what we now call communion, right before he has this time and goes into the Garden of Gethsemane where he prays and talks to God in his final hour as he awaits the betrayal for him to go and be tried and then crucified. Right before all of this takes place, Jesus gives us a prayer. This is literally the Lord's Prayer. What many people call the Lord's Prayer is really the model prayer. Jesus gave us the prayer to model. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. It's not the Lord's Prayer. That's supposed to be ours, right? This, what I'm going to read to you this morning, is the Lord's Prayer. This is his prayer, his passionate conversation in one of the last days of his life before his crucifixion. He utters this prayer, and in this prayer, you are going to hear what he's really passionate about. And so I want you to just tune in and listen as I read this to you. John chapter 17. And when Jesus had spoken these words, he lifted up his eyes to heaven, and he said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that the Son may glorify you. Since you have given him authority over all flesh to give eternal life to all whom you have given him. And this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. I glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work that you have given me to do. And now, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had with you before the world existed. I have manifested your name to people whom you gave me out of the world. Yours they were, and you gave them to me. And they have kept your word. Now they know that everything you have given me is from you. For I have given them words that you gave me, and they've received them, and have come to know in truth that I came from you. And they have believed that you sent me. I am praying for them. I'm not praying for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I am glorified in them. I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, keep them in your name, which you have given me, that they may be one, even as we are one. While I was with them, I kept them in your name, which you have given me. I have guarded them. And not one of them has been lost except the son of destruction, that the scripture might be fulfilled. The son of destruction being Judas, who betrayed him. But now I am coming to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sake I consecrate myself, that they also may be sanctified in truth. And here comes the final 6 scriptures in this prayer. I do not ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through the word, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory that you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one, even as we are one. I in them, and you and me, that they may be perfectly one. This is starting to get redundant. He's so intent on it. So that the world may know that you sent me and loved them even as you loved me. Father, I desire that they also, whom you have given me, may be with me where I am. I want them with me to see my glory that you have given me, because you loved me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, even though the world doesn't know you, I know you, and these know that you have sent me. I made known to them your name, and I will continue to make it known, that the love with which you have loved me may be in them, and I in them. So, what do we have here? What we have is a table that's duct taped together. All right. This is a Gaston County church. It broke, so we duct taped it. What you just heard is Jesus Christ talking about his passion for you and I to know the Father. His passion for the Father to be known by us. His passion for you and I to know and love one another. His passion for you and I to be one with him. The whole prayer is all about relationships. All these relationships and how they're coming together, that we would know one another in the same way that the Father and the Son know one another and love one another and are bound together in unity. And so he applies that to us and him, to us and one another, to us and those who will become part of us, all across the board, to the level that the way you and I love one another would inspire the world to want to know God. And that's a pretty big deal. The passion of Christ was to heal relationships. He died on a cross so that our relationship with God would be healed, and he died on a cross so that our relationship with one another would be healed. It's the central passion for Jesus to be the healer of relationships. And so what I want to do this morning is I want to start by just first kind of exposing a little bit about what I've learned as a pastor for the last 10 years almost, 9 years, and what I've seen just being involved in ministry and working with people. These are no more than my human observations. You and I might totally disagree, but it's just what I've learned over really the last 20 years in ministry. And so these are the things that I have seen from my perspective that kill relationships. All right? These are really, to me, the 8 top killers of relationships. Everybody say killers. All right. Number one. This one it may sound remedial to some of you. Interestingly, in 1 Corinthians 13, Paul points out that love is not easily angered. It's not grumpy. It's not grouchy. Love is not grouchy old man disease like you saw in the skit, right? A killer of relationships is frequent negativism and anger. People who are always upset. They're always negative. The glass is always half full. Nothing is ever good enough. Nothing's ever nice enough. Nothing ever makes the expectations. They're always negative, and they find themselves angry all the time. I find myself in that mode sometimes. I see why men get into it. We get into grouchy old man. We work hard, and we're stressed out, and we come home, and the next thing we know, all that stress and all that stuff that we've bottled in with the people we work with, just boom, it just gets barked all over our family. And all our family knows is the grouchy old man that comes home from work and whines and complains the whole time he's home about everything. So frequent negativism and anger, it destroys relationships because everybody just gets tired. Second, jealousy. This concept, here's my snot rag. I'm throwing snot everywhere. It's glorified snot. No. All right, so jealousy, that my spouse has more time, more free time, that my spouse gets to sleep later, that my spouse gets more fun than I get, that my spouse has more of this, I have more of that. It's jealousy inside of relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's brother or sister. You get more of mom and dad than I get. You get more attention. You get more of this. I get more of that. You got more money from my parents. You got more. All that stuff destroys relationships. Nobody likes anybody, and nobody can maintain a relationship when jealousy is involved in it. Because people who are jealous, they rob life out of folks, and it kills the relationship. Number 3. Bitterness and unforgiveness. Kind of a duh one, that's obvious, but I just want to point out real quickly that bitterness and unforgiveness really go hand in hand. We often try to say, well, I'm not bitter, I just haven't forgiven them. We kind of like to white glove that, you know? Well, I'm just kind of, no, you're bitter. That's what bitterness is. Bitterness is unforgiveness. When we refuse to give a person, to release a person from what they've done to us. Now, many people think they can tunnel that I can not cannot forgive this person because this person wronged me in a severe way, and so I'm not going to forgive them, but that has no effect on the rest of my relationships. And the fact of the matter is that's a lie. Bitterness is a cancer. It grows inside of you, and it begins to produce fruit in every relationship in your life. Every single relationship in your life suffers from that bitterness. Bitterness is often what drives that grouchy, negative human being who's never happy with anything, who's critical about everything, whose everything glass is always half empty. Typically, it's because that's a person who cannot forgive one thing in their life. It may not be a lot, it might just be one, but it only takes one. It becomes a cancer and it destroys relationships. Number 4, drama. Oh my gosh. I have never been exposed to drama like I have been since becoming a pastor. Drama in relationships. Dramatic people exhaust folks, right? They exhaust people. We live in a world now that it's called, every time a person is dramatic, they get labeled bipolar, and they need a pill for it. Now, there are certain people who are bipolar. There's a switch in their brain, it doesn't engage, and it causes hormones to be released that cause these dramatic emotional responses, and it needs to be treated. But what I'm finding is, and I'll just throw a number out from my own perspective, I would say at least 75% of the people that I meet that claim to be bipolar, that claim to be ADHD, all this stuff, are really just immature. It's just immaturity. If they just need to grow up, all right? They need to grow up and stop acting like a 7th grade girl. All right? That you have been wounded, we're going to talk about it in a minute, and your response is you are Mr. or Miss Drama. You act like my little daughter. I found out that she's drama queen. Little baby girls are drama queens. Can I get an amen from all the parents in the house, right? And so that's how you act. And it wears people out. Matter of fact, you kill every relationship you have except with dramatic people. Dramatic people tend to flock together so they can all get hyper about stuff that doesn't matter and respond and go crazy about everything. You react to the extremity on everything. Your third cousin's former dog's owner found out that he had a loose tooth and you're tore out of the frame about it. All right? It's all this drama. Everything's always to the extreme. And so you ruin the relationships with healthy people, and you find yourself with dramatic people, and dramatic people don't have healthy relationships. They are just drawn to one another so they can all be dramatic together. All right? Number 5, betrayal. The obvious betrayal in relationship that everybody's already thinking about is when there's an affair. But betrayal goes much further than an affair. Betrayal is what we do when we substitute our covenant relationship with somebody for something else. I'm a workaholic. And oftentimes, my family gets betrayed on your behalf. It's not your fault, it's my fault. And so I commit adultery with the vision that God's given me. I began to serve the vision instead of loving my family. And so I destroy that relationship with my family. I've seen people do that with hobbies. I've seen people do that with money. I've seen people do it with drugs, alcohol. You may not understand why your spouse, you have an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction or a pornography addiction, and you don't understand why your relationship is falling apart the way it is. It's because you have betrayed them. It's no different than if you were running around having sex with everybody in town. It's the same result. It is a betrayal, and it kills relationships. Number 6, selfishness. Selfish about time. Selfish about money. Selfish about emotion. Selfish about sex. I've seen it in marriages where the person, their sexual drive is all about themselves. Selfishness kills relationships, no matter what it is. It destroys it because people can't deal with it anymore. I watch some people so selfishly, when you take selfishness and jealousy, put it together, it becomes this awful nightmare. A death of a family. One of the most ungodly moments in relationships that I've ever seen is at the reading of a will. And people who are supposed to love one another act like total idiots as they flock into the house and get in these fights over who got more dishes and cups and forks and knives. Selfish. Brothers and sisters of the same flesh and blood won't speak to one another for the rest of their life because so-and-so got $100 more than I got. Selfish. Number 7, control. Ironically, the more we attempt to control relationships, even on the positive, the more we kill it. Some of you are trying to fix a person of something that's wrong in their life or something that's wrong in your marriage, and so that you realize this marriage is messed up, and so you are trying to fix this marriage, but ironically, because you are trying to control it by fixing it, which you feel is right, because it needs to be fixed, but ironically, you're controlling and trying actually making it worse. When we try to control one another, we kill the relationship. God has designed us to be under His authority, not one another's. And so when we try to control each other, it kills it. As a pastor doing, and I don't mean to pick on ladies, but it's a fact. I've met with more couples where as soon as they got married, the wife, 4 to 5 months into the marriage, began to try to control her husband and change her husband into something very different from the person that she married. And then, when her husband gets wussed up and caves in, that's a whole other sermon to men, all right? If you allow your wife to change you from the man that God made you, you're the problem. But I'm just going to say this to the women. Don't be shocked that when you so control your husband that you turn him into something very different from the person that you married, that you suddenly don't like him. The reason shouldn't shock you. It's not who you married. You fell in love with this guy, and then you turned him into this, and you don't know why. Why do I not love him anymore? It's because he's not the same human being. And so I see people trying to control us. And men, Gaston County has some of the messed up views of manhood I've ever seen in my life. We have the wussified, honey, whatever you want, you can control me because I can't stand that you don't like me at some point, and so you control me. And then we have the other side where we have these psychotic men who control their wife. The poor wife lives in this realm of, it's under the auspice of jealousy, but what it's about is a man who's still a little boy sucking his thumb, drinking from the bottle, and so he has to control his wife's every movement. He has to control her cell phone. He has to control the bank accounts. He has to control this. He has to control this. He has to control where she goes, when she goes, how she goes, gets people, calls people, is she really there? That is a little boy who needs to grow up. So when we try to control relationships, we destroy relationships. No matter at what level it is. Parents are destroying the relationships with their children. Some godly Christian parents are destroying the relationship with their children because they have reacted to those who have no control over their kids. We lived the Dr. Spock book wrote back in the 60s. Oh, just let your kids figure everything out on their own. You don't need to discipline them. You don't need to give them rules. Just let them figure it all out. Could there be anything more stupid than that? All right? Just give your little child a handgun, load it, and say, well, you just find out if it'll blow your head off. And that's just dumb. But on the other extreme, we have in the Christian church parents who control everything about their children. Their children never have an opportunity to grow up and make decisions on their own. And so they put them in this hypergamy. There's some teenager going out there, my parents, odds are, I said the same thing about my mom and daddy as well. All right? So if your kids don't have at least a little bit of thinking they're being controlled, then you're on this end. But you as parents have to be honest. I'm watching some parents so control their kids and so try to place them in this environment that has no bacteria, no danger, and thus no decision. They control everything about their life and then don't understand how come the first chance they have, they take off and run. Number 8. This really is the headliner. Wounds. Wounded people wound people. Simple as that. Wounds of the soul. You grew up and I've never lived anywhere where I've met more men who never received any affirmation from their father whatsoever. I used to hear about it on TV or read about it in books, and I just kind of blew it off. I don't know what it is about this culture here in the Piedmont of North Carolina that's bred this, but I meet more men who've grown up wounded by their fathers. I was flabbergasted. In 2 years I coached here at North Gaston. I was blown away at the amount of kids that we had on senior night whose parents didn't even show up on senior night, the night that we wanted to acknowledge their parents. Didn't even come. They had coaches and other people stand there with them because their mom and dad didn't give a rat's rear end about them enough to even stand on the field with them and say, we're proud of our son. Blown away. I grew up blessed. Mom and dad were two human beings who had problems, and just like everybody else, but they stayed together, they loved one another, and they loved us. My dad affirmed me. And so I just thought everybody else got that. He looked my rear end and then told me he loved me. He gave me both. I meet people who've been wounded at the deepest level. Girls who've been sexually abused, who are now women. And their whole concept of sexuality and love was destroyed by some uncle or neighbor. Some boy who grew up being raped by his neighbor or his dad. And it's wounded them. So whether it's abandonment or the brokenness of the home, I sit on these different boards and committees around the community trying to be involved in things that help bridge our church into avenues where we can really serve our community and make a difference and make an impact. And so as I sit on these boards and these committees dealing with these different issues and problems in American culture, it's kind of ironic that once we really get down to the issues and we stop talking about politics and donkeys and elephants and all this kind of mess, and we can really get everybody talking about the issue, when we get down to the issue, what we find is the root problem in America is on a practical level. The root problem in America obviously is we need Jesus, but it shows up in the practical nature that the family is broken, and because the family is broken, relationships are broken, and so the entire country is suffering from this. Our country is suffering from the byproduct of broken relationships. They've been broken from wounds. They've been broken by all this mess. Yet 96% of Americans say they're Christians. Or 90-some percent, whatever it is. Oh, I'm a Christian, believe in God. So how does Jesus address this? For some of you, some of these things you're thinking, oh boy, that's me, or that's me, or some of you are thinking, that's my life, and that's my life, and that's my life. How does Jesus address this? How does the person of Christ deal with this? Well, I'm going to surprise some of you. Some of you are here this morning and you're looking forward to me telling you, here's 5 things you need to do that'll fix everything. That's not what I'm getting ready to tell you. Relationships are organic. And for all of our tree hugger friends here this morning, I'm learning to speak your language. There's no relationship that's alike. Why? Because there's no single person that's alike. We're all unique. Relationships are the most customized things in the world. It's one person who is, human beings are complex beyond description. Who can describe a single person? There's 1,000 exceptions for everything that you find true about my life. Well, he's this way, but not in that way. And he's this way, but not really in that way. And we're all unique individuals. So there is no little, okay, here's 5 points and do this and that'll fix it. The only way that we can be healed in relationships is when we have a relationship that's right, that heals us. A healer of relationships that we get into a relationship with is the only thing that will ever do this. Christ functions that way in his identity. Listen to how this unfolds. John chapter 17, verse 19 and 26. It says, I made known to them your name, and I will continue to make it known, that the love with which you have loved me may be in them, and I in them. What is the love that God had? For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, and whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. What is the love that was in him? That even though we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. The love that was in Christ, this love of God that was in Christ, is a love of God that said, I love humanity so much, I'm going to let my Son have the weight of all of hell placed upon him, and he is going to suffer the wrath of hell that you and I earned, that he did nothing to do. He had nothing to do with it. You and I rejected God. We separated ourselves from him. We violated his law. We removed ourselves from him, and forgiveness to be real, there had to be suffering and pain to suffer that separation, and Jesus took upon him the eternal wrath of God, and that is the love of God that he came and showed us. So what effect does that have on our relationships? Well, it's number 1 in your notes under these things that Christ does to heal. Number 1, he defeats our anger and bitterness by teaching us the truth about our own failures. What he did on the cross for me. He defeats anger and bitterness by teaching of his love for us in spite of our failures, his willingness to suffer for us in spite of our failures and for our failures. As I grow in this knowledge, I gain the grace to forgive and the patience needed to confront in a manner that heals instead of punishes. And we're going to get a lot more in that. It's a big sentence, one-on paragraph I gave you, and we're going to really unpack it just a lot next year. But I just want to get you to see right here on this first point is this. If one of the killers of relationships is anger, and one of the killers of relationships is bitterness, if that is what can come in and kill a relationship, if my attitude of controlling you to fix you is one of those things that can kill a relationship, then what happens when I get into a relationship with God is exactly what happened to Isaiah. For those of you who are brand new Christians, you may not have read Isaiah yet. It's in the first half of your Bible in the Old Testament. It's a story of a man who led the church. He was this righteous man. He was respected by everybody as this wonderfully righteous and holy man who was the leader of the church in Jerusalem, and yet he had never really encountered God. So when he finally does encounter God, and he finally initiates and begins a real relationship with God because God initiates and begins it with him and demonstrates itself to him, the first words out of Isaiah's mouth, this deeply religious, pious, and holy man, the first words out of his mouth when he realized who God was, woe is me, for I am a man of unclean lips. Now, did he acknowledge the sin of his own people? Yeah, it was the next thing he said. And woe is everybody else I'm with. We're all messed up. But his initial statement was, woe is me. It's really hard for me to be bitter at what you've done to me when I get to know Christ. Because when I get to know Christ, I not only realize what I have done to him, but he is so holy that his light shines and brings truth. He says, I am the truth. And so his light shines into me, and I begin to see my own depravity and what I have done to you as well. So it's awfully hard for me to be angry and bitter at you when I am faced with the reality of what I have done to you also. So God begins to heal these killers of relationships in my life because I start realizing how much he loved me in spite of my mess, and it just messes up my ability to hate you for yours. Number 2. John 17, verse 1 through 2 says this. When Jesus had spoken these words, he lifted his eyes to heaven and said, Father, the hour has come, glorify your Son, that the Son may glorify you, since you have given him authority over all flesh, to give eternal life to all whom you have given him. Jesus clearly saw himself not only as the healer of relationships, but in that context, he saw himself as the person in charge. He's the controller. He makes up the rules. He dictates the path. It's him. So number 2 in your notes is this. He is defeating jealousy, selfishness, and a controlling spirit in my life simply by calling me to submit to his will. The measure by which I can unselfishly live unselfishly and giving to others is directly proportionate to the level where I have submitted myself to the authority of Christ. Directly proportionate. I'm not an expert on raising horses by any means, but I got a little exposure when I was in grad school. I worked on a ranch in Virginia, and I got to watch how they would break horses, and I thought I had learned a little bit of it, and I tried to show a guy how to do it, and I ended up breaking 2 fingers. It was a mess. But nonetheless, what I learned about this thing was a horse that's broken, a real horse that's broken, can not only be ridden by the person who broke it, but ridden by anybody. All right? A true horse that's broken, anybody can get on it. Any age, any size, any shape, it don't matter. They've been broken, and they're willing to be ridden. Our horses were trail horses, and we had a youth camp, and we had a children's camp, and so the job of our horses, they had to be broke to a place that they were willing to put their nose in the butt of the horse in front of them and be a butt follower. That's what our horses were. They were butt followers. And so they would get in line, and we needed that horse to not be jealous that his buddy was up in front of him and getting to be in the front of the line, because we were putting little 8-year-old kids on these horses, you know. And so that horse had to not be jealous that he wasn't in the place in line that the other person was in place. And they couldn't be selfish that one horse got an apple from a kid and he didn't get an apple from the kid, Because if he got selfish that this one kid gave this horse over here, Slayback Jack got it, but Smokey didn't get it. If Smokey got jealous and selfish about it, then Smokey would go over there and bite the kid and take the apple, and that just leads to lawsuits and camp gets shut down. And so these horses had to be broke, right? So this jealousy, this selfish, controlling spirit. It's not cool when a horse takes off running across the field and you got a 6-year-old going, and so the horse has to be broke so that the horse is willing to stick his face into the butt of another horse and just follow it, no matter who's on it, all right? They say, oh, so you're telling me I have to stick my face in my wife's butt and follow her around? Is that how God is going to heal my relationships? No, all right, but kind of. Not really, I'm just kidding. What happens is that as we get in tune with Christ, he breaks us. He breaks us to a place as I begin to be consumed with Christ and I enter into a relationship with him. I begin to realize his authority and that he is in control. And when I start understanding in my relationship with him, as I get to know him, I start understanding how in control he is and how he expects to be king and treated as king. As I get into that and I realize he expects to be treated as king, then it becomes awfully stupid of me to try to be king. It becomes awfully ridiculous when I somehow think that I have any authority whatsoever. When I begin to get plugged into the relationship with him and I begin to get broke by him, then suddenly I'm not concerned about what you have and what I have and me wanting what you have. Because it's not about that anymore. It's about that I know him and he has broke me. And brokenness brings a complacency that is wonderful. Not a complacency that is negative, but a complacency of God is enough. He's in charge. What do you want from the Lord? When we get to that point, we become healers of relationships instead of robbers of relationships. Third, in John chapter 17, verse 13, it says, but now I am coming to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. That they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves, independently from everything. That they would become producers of joy. For your notes, as we get to know Christ, he is defeating the drama and the pain in my life, the wounds in my life, the lack of joy in my life, by leading me to be consumed with his joy, loving and being loved by God. When I'm truly satisfied by him, I can enjoy and be enjoyed by others. Jesus said, when I come to you, when I come into your life, I'm going to become a wellspring of you. I'm going to place the Holy Spirit of God, and I'm going to be a wellspring of life, not something that contains life, but something that produces life. You and I, when we fall in love with Christ and we get into a relationship with him, instead of being consumers of joy, we become producers of joy. Now, for relationships to be healed, it requires that you stop robbing life from everybody and you start producing life into them. They cannot be healed as long as you take all the gas out of their tank. But when you begin to produce gas for one another, that's how relationships are designed, that when we begin to produce it for one another, then that relationship thrives. The American church, long 50, 60, 80 years ago, somewhere along the line in the American church, something awful happened. Joy is produced when we are consumed by Jesus. But somewhere along the line, this terrible, awful thing happened where the American church stopped worshiping God and started worshiping church. That's why we have 400 churches in Gaston County. Everybody starts treating church like their own little thing. Churches have publicly said, I was reading it in a Christian journal recently, churches that were saying, we would rather die than change. That's unfathomable. We would rather not exist as a church than change. Why? because they now worship the church. So what is the terrible consequence of that? You want to know where to find the most drama, the most jealousy, the most bitterness, the most selfishness, the most grouchy, angry, whining, complaining, immature people? You want to know where to find them? Find the steeple, go inside. It's the truth. Now, I get people criticize me, send me emails, you're hard on the church. I'm a whole lot easier than it's going to be the judgment day of Christ. So is it any wonder then? Is it any wonder that when we played idolatry in the church and we got consumed with being church, but listen, church is awesome. Jesus considers the church his body. He loves the church. He died for the church. He formed the church, but he not formed it so we would worship the church. He formed it so that we could exist as his church and glorify him and work together to grow each other up and go change the world, but not to worship one another or to worship our church. So when we did that, what happened? We took the engine of joy out of Christianity. And so the most miserable human beings in the world in America are Christians. How are we going to be salt and light if we have no joy? And how are we not going to be salt and light if we are full of joy? The world's longing for peace and passion. They're longing for joy and happiness. When we get consumed with Christ, we become producers instead of consumers. American Christianity is all about consuming. Give me what I want, when I want it, how I want it, where I want it. If you don't, then I'm going to be mad at you and I'm going to start a split. But when we become consumers of joy, everything changes. We heal relationships and the world sees it and they long for it. Producers. Fourth, by teaching me this, John 17:22-23, number 4, last one. The glory that you have given me, Jesus says, the glory that you have given me I have given to them, that they may be one even as we are one. I and them and you and me, that they may become perfectly one, so that the world may know that you sent me and loved me even as you loved me. I and them, you and me, that they may become perfectly one, just as we are, so the world may know you. Meaning this, by teaching me to love him, I get consumed with Christ. By teaching me to love him and be loved by him, I learn the value of cherishing and honoring relationships, and therefore I stop betraying and wounding those around me. This is the point that maybe it's really not for anybody other than me. This might have been in my studies where I wrote this just simply out of conviction. But it's something God has been working in my life for the last couple of years. I shared with our home life group the other week. I love our life group. In our home group, we get together and just be able to be real with one another and pray for one another and talk about what we're learning with each other. And it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of. And so I was with our home life group, and we were discussing and imagine the poor folks in my home group. Most home groups use the sermon notes. And my home group has to discuss the sermon notes with the preacher watching. And so anyway, we're talking about, it was a sermon I preached a few weeks ago on how God is trying to transform us into love, to become love. And so I think it was when we were anyway, I told the group, I said, if you get to know me, you'll find out real quickly that if you're involved with something that I'm doing, then I'm all about hanging out with you and talking and calling, and we're going to be buddies. But if you're not involved with something I'm doing, you'll never hear from me again. It's not that I got anything wrong with you or I think bad of you, but if we're not on, I get up in the morning and dream about what I can do to bring this church together to go change the world. Before I was your pastor, I was out on the road helping other churches come together to go impact their neighborhoods for Christ. I did that for 10, 11, 12 years, however long it was. So for 20 years, I got up every morning going, I'm going to get Christians together to go change the world. And I've got these visions and dreams, and I'm just kind of like, whoa, I'm just ready to roll with it, right? So if you want to do that with me, and we got something together in that project, and we're trying to do it, then man, we're buddies. But if not, you will probably never hear from me again. And I have wounded a lot of people doing that. A whole lot of people. And I've written it off because I do have some practical reason in it. I can't know all y'all. I mean, I can't have a deep relationship with just with our staff and our core team, our volunteer pastors have grown so much. I can't even know all of them at the same level. It's just not possible. But when I took that off the table, I was awfully satisfied with that practical reality. And it was because I'm good at trying to love you, but I'm terrible at being loved. Some of you are just like that. And the reason is because you're a controlling freak just like me. Why are we uncomfortable about being loved? Well, because that's something that's out of your control. You just have to accept it and enjoy it. And I'm not good at that. I would just rather serve you, and you like it. And you better like it, dadgummit. So when I get into a relationship with God, that relationship is totally driven not by how I love Him, but it is driven entirely by how I accept His love for me. My relationship with God can go no further than how I accept His love for me. And learning to accept His love for me allows me to begin to learn to accept love from others and value and cherish those relationships. The more I cherish my relationship with God as a person and not just a reason to give me what I need to go do something, the more I cherish His relationship, the more I naturally learn to cherish other relationships, and I stop wounding and killing them and betraying them. So here's how I want to bring this together. Christ's method of healing relationships is to focus my entire attention on being healed. There are no 5-step programs, 12-step programs in the Bible on how to fix a relationship. Christ's method is to focus my entire attention on being healed, changed, matured by Him, so that the fruit of that process can help heal, change, and mature those around me. So what's your focus? I'm going to leave you with this little story, illustration. They're picking on me. I like picking on me about playing football or not playing. On the team, but I was the practice squad All-American. You know, people said, you play football? I'm like, well, kind of. You know, I was on the team and got the invite to be on the team. But I was kind of just stay away from the water or I'll knock you out kind of, That's about as far as my college career went. And then I transferred to Liberty and I just came unglued. I've had 14 surgeries and all this stuff. And so I'm 38 years old, but I've had severe arthritis in my shoulders and my back and my knees for quite a long time, like very severe. And like the doctors have recently did MRI on my shoulder, and it's about the equivalent of an 85-year-old man. I'm just 38. So I deal with this pain all day long, every day, and I just live with it. I try to stay in shape. That's why I go to the gym all the time, work out at Planet Fitness, and I try to eat right. I ain't doing that the last few weeks. But along the way, this stuff would flare up. So I was going to this chiropractor in Jacksonville, Florida, and we lived there, and they had a person there that did the acupuncture stuff, and they stick the needles in you, and my back had gotten so bad I couldn't stand up, and so I walk into this chiropractor office like this one day, and I'm having to hold on my pants to hold myself up, and I go in and say, well, listen, we want to try this acupuncture on you. We think it'll heal you. Now, people are all into this, they got rocks and they're humming and all this, and they think sticking a needle in your foot can cure cancer in your head or something. And so, I'm like, I was hurting so bad, I said, I don't care, whatever you want to do, So I lay down and they start sticking all these needles in me and all this stuff, and they got some kind of thing burning over in the corner. I don't know what it was. I was scared to take a pee test later. I'm in this deal, they got stuff burning and they got needles and all this, and I'll be doggone, man, it worked. At least I thought it did. It worked. I felt great. It was about the next day. Got up that morning, typically the mornings are my worst time. I wake up is the most pain I go through. I got up, I felt great. And I went straight to the gym and I did squats and hang cleans and I went and ran 10 miles. I was just, woo, this is awesome. But you know what I found out? That acupuncture mess is kind of like Tylenol. At least for me. There's some out there getting all offended because you're like all into it. You know, you're like, oh, I love nature. I eat the herbs and it heals all my pains and stuff. What I found out, that was smoke and mirrors, man. That stuff, all it did was, it was like Tylenol. It told my brain that it didn't hurt anymore. But it didn't fix nothing. You follow me? It didn't fix anything. It just tricked my brain into saying it didn't hurt. So I just kept doing what I did and made it even worse. Because the next time I walked in, I was like this. I mean, I came in, I was like Roger. You know, I was like, I can't even stand up. It was awful. And so look at this wagon boys. I said, no, just shoot me. All right? If you're going to do that, just shoot me. Treat me like a whole horse, take me up back, shoot me in the head. But just keep your needles. My point being this. As Americans, we got used to microwave relationships. Give me the 4 tools that I need, push the button, and in 5 minutes, it'll be fixed. And so we read all these books, and we go to these seminars, and blah, 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 and we're looking for those 5 things that I need to do that's going to fix it. And you know what? It might give you some temporary relief, but here's the problem. If what's killing your relationship is bitterness, it doesn't matter that you've learned how to communicate better. It does not matter that you've learned your spouse's love language. Because if you don't get rid of the bitterness, you are eventually going to default back to that. We always go back to our default settings. Always. What Jesus does is he changes the default setting. He changes that so that I don't have to go to a seminar to teach me some trick, some smoke and mirror on how to fix my relationship with my kid, or fix my marriage, or fix my relationship with the person at work that totally bombshelled every opportunity I have for the gospel. I don't have to have some kind of magic act for that. Because what happened is when I get into a relationship with God, God changes me, my default settings change, and I begin to become a producer of life and joy and peace and love. And that naturally heals relationships. So, dang, preacher, I thought you were going to give me the easy solution. Well, I'm going to make this even a little harder for you. So I'm having to use you. I want to be honest. So, man, this is cold water you got to pour on us. But this is the cold hard truth. Some of you are going, cool. Man, I'm so glad I heard this message. I'm going to get to know God. I'm going to surrender my life to God. And then my spouse is finally going to love me. Maybe not. I thought these were real relationships. Relationships are still 2 individuals. So here's the deal. Some of you are sitting here and your marriage is awful. And if you want to come to God to fix your marriage, well, that's not going to work. So the relationship that he wants to heal is the one that you have with him. And the byproduct is going to be some wonderful things in your marriage that's going to give your marriage the only chance it will ever have. But unless your spouse comes to that same place, it's not going to work. You say, well, what am I supposed to do? Is it worth it? Yes. Very much. So what if I come to God and he changes me? I go through all this pain and agony, confessing my sin, and God maturing me, and then my spouse just leaves me. There's an interesting statistic on how many people who get divorced again. I forget the number, but it's a big one. And studies show the reason is because they never dealt with the issues that caused the first one. And so they just carried it again, and give me a second. So listen, the worst case scenario here is this. God may change you, and you may be so filled with joy, and you might become the most loving human being in the world, and your child that you've torn that relationship up may still never have anything to do with you. Your spouse still may never have anything to do with you. Your father or your mother still may never have anything to do with you. But you will be filled with joy, and you will be healed, and you will begin to produce healing things into others who will accept it, and you will have healthy relationships. Unfortunately, it may not be with the one that you want it with. And that's the cold, hard truth. So why do it? Well, because you're designed to be in a relationship with your Creator. And if all else fails, you will have a wonderful relationship with Him, and that one's for eternity. And He will never forsake you, ever.